a professional goalkeeper playing in Norway. She has presented us this morning with her PowerPoint slides, which will give you a good idea of her journey and what she's been through to get to be a professional. And also, obviously, she's very organized, and we're thrilled to have you, Adelaide. Thank you for taking the time to speak to us direct from Norway, and where it is about 9 o'clock, I guess now. Mm-hmm. So with no further ado, I will turn it over to Adelaide Gay. And if you have questions, please make sure that you write them down so Coach Lou can enter them later on in the broadcast.
Awesome. Well, thank you. Thank you both for having me. I'm excited about it. Yeah, it's about 9 p.m. here. I'm in Norway. I am playing here with a team called Klepp. We haven't done much playing yet, though, because of Corona. So we actually this week got to start up a little bit of small group training with a bunch of restrictions, but it seems like things are kind of headed in the right direction here. So that's good. I did make a PowerPoint presentation just because I know probably a lot of soccer players like me are visual. So it's nice to be able to see the information, plus it keeps me on track. So you can go to the next slide. Okay, so just the basic information. Let me move this. I'm from New Jersey. I played for PDA growing up, which is a club in New Jersey. We were a competitive team. I always wanted to play in college. I always wanted to play professionally. Mostly, I just wanted my team to win, whatever tournament we were playing in that day. But the biggest thing that I want to say before we start is just that I'm you, but older. In terms of club soccer, college soccer, I had probably had a similar experience to whatever you guys are going through right now. Obviously, there's some differences in terms of the environment. We didn't really have that much social media when I was growing up, but a lot of the stuff was very, very much the same. So you can go to the next one. Okay, so before I get into who I am and what I've achieved, what teams I've played for, I kind of want to start from the beginning and talk about when I was your age, what I wanted. My biggest thing was when I was playing club soccer, I wanted my team to win a national championship. And I thought that every tournament was the biggest deal, the end of the world. When we went to Surf Cup, I wanted to win Surf Cup. And yeah, so, I wanted my team to win. That was like my biggest thing. Obviously, I am of the generation that was heavily influenced by the '99 World Cup. I was young then, but I still vividly remember it, and seeing women playing on that stage was a huge influencing factor in my life and my career. Obviously, back then, UNC was winning national championships very frequently, so I wanted to go play at UNC. I wanted to win a national championship. It wasn't like now where there was a women's professional league consistently. It was kind of off and on, so I wanted to play professionally, but it was also the kind of thing that wasn't necessarily a concrete reality. And then, of course, I also wanted to make a lot of money, which, I realize now these things are not necessarily compatible, but these were the expectations that I had for my life. Of course, I knew it was going to be difficult, but I didn't understand the reality of that at that age. I just thought that this is what I wanted to do, and I thought that this was entirely achievable. So, cut to the reality. I think many of you probably already know that, when you have certain expectations, there's going to be adversity and there's going to be reality, and there's going to be, things that you have to work through that, they're going to be there, but you don't know what they are going to be. So having said all of that about myself and what I wanted when I was younger, I chose to go to Yale University, not UNC. And I chose that for a bunch of reasons. The first is I worked really hard in school, and so it seemed like a good idea. The second, which is a big one, is that they wanted me. I'll probably say this a few other times, but I'm 5'6" on a good day. So I'm not the tallest goalkeeper. And I would not say that when coaches looked at me, they were thinking, oh, we have the next Hope Solo here, let's develop her. I don't necessarily think that I had that label of potential when I was younger. I was also born in November. So when we played ODP, there were some years where there was a massive physical difference between me and some other goalkeepers. So I was really lucky to play for a club team that was really successful. And so I did have opportunities to go to certain universities. But I wouldn't say that, the best schools in the country were knocking down my door, and I chose to go to Yale. And I think one of the main things that people tell you when they're saying to choose a school is to choose somewhere that if you got injured, you would still want to go there. And I think it's good advice in a way, but I also think that if soccer is your entire identity, I shouldn't say entire identity, but if it's a really big deal to you, if you go somewhere where it's not a priority, you're not going to be really that happy, or at least that's kind of what happened to me. And so I decided to transfer, and I think it's important for any young person to know that if you go somewhere and it's not a good fit, you can make that decision again. It's not easy. You have to tell your coach and all your friends that you don't want to play there anymore, but you can remake that decision. And I decided to transfer. I walked on at UNC, so I got into the school on my own, and I knew the goalkeeper coach from having gone to summer camps all my life. And so I knew him, but, I was a walk-on. I was the third string. And it was tough. At my first year, I didn't get to play a lot, and I really only got to play because two goalkeepers ahead of me got injured, one pretty seriously and one not that seriously. And I got to play for 3 or 4 games, and I did a good job, and I got to keep playing. And my senior, well, I won't ruin the surprise, but it went pretty well. And then, I'll say my senior year, there was no professional league in the US. So the year I graduated was actually the first year of the NWSL. So again, it's the kind of thing where you don't know if the ambition that you have is going to be a reality. But you kind of have to make it work and have faith that if you keep working in the right direction, you'll get to play in a professional league. That said, I have played professionally, but I've also been a practice player many times. There's been many times when I was not earning a steady paycheck as a soccer player. And that's unfortunately still reality for many women's soccer players. I've been fortunate to have a lot of paying jobs, but there's also been a lot of times where I've coached and worked multiple jobs to continue playing. As part of playing professionally, I've had to go overseas so that I could get playing time. I've lived abroad for 9 months at a time. I'm here in Norway. There was it would be really difficult right now actually to get home. So there's a lot of uncertainty with playing abroad. There's obviously some great aspects as well, but in terms of the reality of this, I've had thumb surgery, I had broken ribs, I was in a hospital for 3 days with my kidney bleeding, and there's just tons of adversity that you face, and the reality of trying to play for as long as I've played. But if we go to the next slide, if you can get through all of this stuff, there's a second reality, which is the reality of the successes that I've been able to have in my career, and the experiences that I've been able to have. So my senior year, I was able to win a national championship with UNC. I got to play too, which was not what I expected when I transferred. 2 NWSL championships. I've played professionally for 8 years. This is my 8th year, I should say, so 7 and a little bit. I've been able to live in 4 countries. And as a part of trying to continue to play and make enough money to survive, I also started my own company, co-founded a company called Duke Dig Brand, which makes soccer notebooks. They look like this. It's like a moleskin, but it's got the field drawn in. They're waterproof too. Should go buy some. I have coached a ton as a goalkeeper coach, and I have my coaching license. I obviously earned my degree from UNC in business, which is coming in handy. So there's been all these fantastic experiences that I've gotten to have, but they've always come with this sort of adversity and these moments in time where I didn't necessarily know if there was a future. And I would say in professional soccer, every year your job is kind of on the chopping block. You don't know if you're going to get your contract renewed. You don't know if you're going to tear your ACL. You don't know what's going to happen. So there's a lot of uncertainty, but a lot of good things have come from it so far. So
Adelaide, can I jump in and ask you a question here to help clarify for some of our younger viewers? Can you describe what a practice player means in terms of the NWSL? Because I think that's a very important distinction, because I think you said you did that 2 seasons, correct?
2 seasons, yeah.
Yeah. So can you go a little deeper into that for our viewers, so they know, our goalkeepers and families, and they know what that means?
Yeah. So obviously it's kind of evolved over the seasons a little bit. The NWSL, when it first started, because of, they wanted to be very financially stable, the rosters were limited to 20 players. They're still pretty limited, but they were limited to 20 players. 2 of those roster spots were goalkeepers. So those were the only players that were allowed to be paid. And in my first year in the NWSL, I made $8,000. So that's just to give you an idea how salaries have grown. And that's what the people that are getting paid. That said, it's hard to have 2 goalkeepers on a team, because if one gets injured, you only have 1 goalkeeper. And they definitely, in a professional game, don't want that goalkeeper to get injured and then the professional team to have to put a field player in. So what they kind of created was this system of practice players, which are players that don't get paid, but they train with the team every day. They, sometimes they'll give you a host family, or they'll help you with certain things, but a lot of times you have to support yourself, either through coaching or, whatever means. But if someone does get injured, then you do get signed to the roster. So, for example, my first year when I was a practice player, I was with the Washington Spirit, and Ashlyn Harris got injured. So I was signed for about a month. And then you do get paid for that month. But it's kind of evolved over the years. But that's generally speaking what a practice player is. And usually teams carry 5 or 6 of them, I would say. And at least one's a goalkeeper usually, sometimes 2. Cool.
Perfect. Thanks.
Okay, so that's my basic journey. Obviously, I could get into the nitty-gritty of any of those little decisions and times, but I kind of wanted to sum up 3 things that I have learned and taken away. And I think it's important to note that my journey is not the same as a lot of other people's journeys. And that's not necessarily a bad thing or a good thing. I do feel like I've had to kind of, MacGyver my career together, you could say. And so my first point, and this goes for anyone, not just me, but, success is not a direct path. No one's really going to take you on a direct path. I know coaches are going to help you try to get there, but there's going to be adversity no matter who you are. And realistically, I like to say that adversity is a gift not afforded to everyone. So a lot of times in my life, I've thought, why me? Like, why did this thing happen to me and not this other person? And that's not to say that the other person is bad or anything, but a lot of times that person has not necessarily gone on to be more successful. And a lot of it I can put down to the fact that I had to take the harder path. I had to make the choice to continue to train, even though I didn't make the regional pool, or I had to start a company so that I could make money, or I had to coach because I needed to make money, or I didn't make the team. Sometimes when things are easy, people don't value them as much, and there's a lot of goalkeepers that are really tall and really athletic, and especially if you're not, you're going to look at people investing in those goalkeepers and you're going to think, like, why not me? It's not fair. But fairness is, a completely unnecessary, not unnecessary, but it doesn't matter. Fairness doesn't really matter. And at the end of the day, you're going to be better for it if you take it on in the right capacity, I guess. My second point would be what you think matters most in your life in terms of making decisions, and then also what meaning you take from everything. So I think it's really important, whether you're deciding where to go to college, or whether you want to be a professional soccer player, or whether you want to become a famous musician or whatever, what you think matters most. And that's not to say that you shouldn't take the advice of your parents and your coaches. But there's just been people over the years that have said, well, you're not that tall, you should play at a D3 school, or you're okay at this level, but you'll never make it at the next level. You should go to Yale. I mean, there's so many things, and not that they aren't all well-intentioned, but at the end of the day, what you think matters. And the sooner you can sort of listen to yourself more than other people, I think the better. And then the last one is that attention to detail, planning, and reflection are important. And that is part of why I started my company, because I write everything down. No detail is too small. And I think especially if you're a smaller goalkeeper, the details are so important. So those would be my three main takeaways from my life if I had to sum it up at this point. But yeah, questions? I think that's the next slide, right? Oh no, Duke brand, sorry. I gotta tell you about my company. So when I was playing in Sweden, I was writing in my moleskin, which I always do, planning out, or I guess then I was, taking notes during video sessions and writing out drills that I had done in practice that I wanted to remember, and taking notes. And I remember I was taking them in a nice moleskin, but it had lines, just regular lines, and I had to draw the field in by hand, and it was really ugly, and I have a little bit of OCD. And that's kind of how I decided that, I really needed a moleskin notebook that had the field drawn into it. And so me and another player, we founded Duke brand. This notebook is called The Trainer. It's our hardcover. It's our first one. We founded it in 2017, and we just bought 500 of them and decided to sell them on the internet and see if people would buy them. And they did. And so we, expanded into other notebooks. People said they wanted them to be waterproof. They wanted soft cover. They wanted hardcover. They wanted small, big, all different kinds of notebooks. And then in 2018, we launched the My Trainer, which is our player notebook. Because as a coach, I always make my players write down certain things after training, and I put those things into a notebook, and that's essentially the foundation for the My Trainer. But I think it's important to note Duke brand because it's kind of a huge part of, it is a massive part of my life, but I think it's an important part of my story, because I think, whether you play soccer for 10 years or you play soccer for 25 years, there's always something afterwards. And I think it's really important that players, and especially female players, stay in the game. And that doesn't have to be as a coach, that doesn't have to be as a player, but I think it's great if you can find something that you're passionate about that has something to do with the game if you love the game as well, to continue to be a part of it, no matter what. So, yeah.
I have a question for you, Adelaide, if you would. Could you give the kids an idea of, a day in the life of a pro? And if you can, sort of, I don't know, for lack of a better term, compare and contrast playing pro in the US and playing pro in Europe.
Yeah, absolutely. So in order to do a day in the life, I think the first thing would be that in the US, the pro teams train in the morning. And this is simply because the pro players don't have other jobs. So for the most part, they're all paid, well, aside from the practice players. So the training would be at like 9 or 10 in the morning. So last year with the Courage, I would wake up, go to training. That's the first thing that I would do. Well, maybe I'd answer a few emails, but then I'd go to training. Here, it's a bit different because some of the girls are still in school because they don't have the college system. So if you're still playing, you can go to university and play professionally at the same time. So, and university is a bit different than in the US. Their high school is kind of like our, general college, and then university would be like higher education, I guess. But anyway, so some of them also have jobs during the day, like regular jobs, especially in Sweden. A lot of the girls were school teachers or other jobs. And then training wouldn't be until about 5. Here in Norway, it's a bit of a hybrid. So they have a system where 2 of the days they consider pro days, where we have training in the morning, and 3 are in the evening. But I would say a normal day for me right now, I'll take yesterday because that's when we had our small group training. I woke up. I have been trying to learn how to code. So I took an online course, and then I did some prehab, which is sort of like foam rolling, stretching, yoga, that kind of thing. And then I had my second lift day. So I did a lift, which nowadays is at home, lifting random stuff, basically. And then in the afternoon, I did small group training. And I would say that that's pretty common. You either have training once a day or you have training and a lift. There's really not that many double days in terms of soccer, unless it's like a very light second session, just because when you play professionally, especially over here, it's a 9-month season. So there's really no need to have an intense 2-a-day rhythm ever. So, and then of course, I come back and I work on Duke brand. Yesterday was an especially intense day with emails and stuff, but that would be a regular schedule.
And if you would, you've played in college at a high level, you've played professionally in 2 continents.
Mm-hmm.
What is and you've also coached. So what would you tell a 12-year-old, 13-year-old, 14-year-old goalkeeper? This is what you have to master. These are and not just one thing possibly, but 3 or 4 things that you have to master if you're going to get to the professional level and stay there.
In terms of skills?
Well, let's start with skill, but if there's other things, I've certainly, your attitude, as you've just demonstrated, is key.
Yeah.
But you've played for a bunch of different coaches. You played for a bunch of different goalkeeper coaches. What is sort of the common thread that, like, hey, there's 4 things you got to be able to do, to get to the pros and stay there.
Okay. So, because the first thing that came to my mind was like mental things. I think that is far and away the most important thing, because that allows you to learn all of these skills. If you are messed up in the head, in the sense that something happens and you're reactionary to it and you feel it and you can't get past it, that's a big issue. So I think, being level-headed, putting in the work every single day, and realizing that, you know, good things will happen in the future if you're consistent and you don't become super reactionary to your emotions is really important. In terms of skills, I would say as a goalkeeper, foot skills are massive and they're only becoming more important. So I would say, yeah, I mean, yeah, that's the number one thing. And if you think about it in a game as a goalkeeper, more than half of what you do is going to be with your feet. Just simply because if you make a save, you have to distribute it. So foot skills is really, really important. Common thread across all of them.
For example, how important is communication? Now you're playing in Norway. I don't know if you speak Norwegian, but you know, how important is communication? You know, everybody knows it's important, but how do you attack that obstacle or get over that hurdle when you don't speak, you know, the common language?
Yeah. So luckily, everywhere I've played, the players have understood English relatively well, and they've all wanted to speak in English rather than me try to speak in Swedish or Norwegian.
Yeah.
Because they learn from a very young age. And I will say some places have been better than others, and I think there is a like I'll remember in Sweden, one of our first games, you know, I was saying, like, you can play the ball back to me because the girl, my defender, was running at me with the ball. And she just like looked at me, and then turned and like played it out. And afterwards she was like, I didn't know what you were saying. I didn't know what you were saying. But I think what I will say is a lot of it is learning about your players, whether or not it's communicated. So for me in that situation, I was like, you can always play the ball back to me. Like that's just how I am. I'm like, it doesn't matter where you are. Don't kick it in my goal, but you can play it back to me. I'll figure it out, you know? And that's just after that, you know, it's easy. I barely have to communicate that in the moment. And I'll say that that's pretty flat across the board. I remember in college, we played a 3-back, and each one of my fullbacks were just completely different. Like my right back would play the ball back to me if she was inside the 6-yard box and the ball was bouncing. She would play it back to me. My left back would never play the ball back to me. She could have been like, you know, under threat of alien invasion. She would never play the ball back to me. And my center back, if I could come take it, she would let me come take it. But it's just these like nuances that you learn about players and that they learn about you that I think is even more important than what you actually say during the game. That said, it is really, really important to give your fullbacks information. And I always say that as opposed to tell them what to do, because nobody really wants to be told what to do. You're more providing them information. So if they're facing this way and someone's running behind them, you want to tell them so that they know the person's there. And it's not about saying, mark that player. It's just so that they know, because they're looking here. And most of the time, fullbacks appreciate that. They want it. They want information. So I think communication is huge. And, you know, it's not just on the field, it's off the field. So same thing, if, you know, you're not just telling your players what to do, you want to form a relationship with them where they trust you. If you say things that are wrong all the time or you're yelling at them all the time, they're not going to listen to you. So, yeah, massive.
Nice. For those listening, why don't you go ahead, the Q&A, I have it up, and we can start making this a little more interactive, and you guys have a understanding now of kind of who Adelaide is as a person, as a player, the journey. Let's open it up and dive a little deeper, okay?
Sounds good to me.
Do we have one? Are they sending them to you, Coach, or are they able to?
They should be sending them. They need to send them to me in the Q&A type area.
Okay.
In the past.
Oh,
So Adelaide, did you okay, we got one?
Yeah, there we go.
Here we go. Okay.
So Campbell and Theo want to know what's next. What are your plans next?
Well, hopefully we can play some games here in Norway soon. Our season was supposed to start in April, and it's just been delayed. Right now, it seems like until after June 15th. So that's, my first thing is I want to finish this season. I've always said I'll continue playing as long as I physically feel good, and I feel like I'm improving, not sort of on the steady decline. So that's kind of my guideline in terms of playing. I feel fine, which is crazy, I guess, but I feel good. And yeah, obviously keep growing Duke Dig brand, because I would love to do that, maybe not full time. I do want to coach when I retire. So I think keep growing Duke Dig brand, stay around the game. That's my main goal, is can I make soccer a career for my whole life in some capacity. So
like Evie and myself, you're going to be a soccer junkie is kind of what you're planning.
yeah,
Nice.
I know.
It's better than working.
Yeah.
Exactly. Exactly.
So Kylie asked, what all did you do to make yourself better considering you are a smaller goalkeeper?
So there's kind of two branches to that question. Number one is the reality of it. Like, as a smaller goalkeeper, I don't think that, I think a small goalkeeper can do it as good a job as a large goalkeeper. I don't really think there's a difference. But you have to know, not your limitations, but you have to know the differences in how you should play. So your positioning is going to have to be a little bit different and a little bit better. You have less of a margin for error. So I would say learning about players' touches and body language. If they take a lateral touch or a touch backwards, making sure that you're taking a step backwards. Whereas if they're taking a touch forward, you take a step forward. Those kind of small details. Your timing on crosses. Take a lot of crosses. Physically, you have to have the rest of it in order, making sure that you can jump, making sure you're strong, and then obviously playing to your strengths. So for me as a young goalkeeper, I was always good with my feet, always good with both feet, and I was always playing really high off my line, and really good at communicating. So those were my strengths, and I kind of used them to not have to deal with that many balls in the air or that many shots. So I think forcing other teams to play in a way that makes you successful. I would prefer to have a breakaway once in a while than to have my team sit in and have them just dump balls into my box, So there's a lot of different ways to deal with the reality of being smaller. And then there's the perception issue, which is, I think, a bit more difficult. The one thing I would say is try to play for a coach who wants to win games now. And I know that sounds really strange because, you want to think about your development in the long term, but if a coach is looking to just develop players, they're not looking for a smaller goalkeeper necessarily. They're not looking, I shouldn't say that, but that's been my experience, is that coaches, and this is not a bad thing because I'm a coach and I understand the inclination, but coaches, we believe that we can coach. So we believe that we can teach players how to be goalkeepers, and we believe we can make them more athletic, and we believe we can make them, love the game more, or be smarter, or be more technical, but we know we can't make them taller. So it's not necessarily a bad thing, but I would just say, find a coach that wants to win games, not like a crazy person, but that cares about winning enough that if you are going to be the one, and then that's important, you have to be the one that's going to win games for your team. And then, so find a coach that wants to win and then win games for your team. And that would be the only way really to sort of fix the perception issue.
I'm going to qualify that a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to make the assumption that you're talking about as someone who's maybe a high school age goalkeeper, because our U12, U13, U14, maybe even U15, we don't necessarily need that yet. It's more in those, I would say, in those years when you're going to be seen by coaches would probably be where that is going to be more relevant, because you at some point we have to worry about developing, right? So just qualifying that for all of our members, in that sense, that just because you're winning is part of growing as well. So you have to be in the right environment and context for that. So for our academy kids, we don't need to worry about you winning all the time. Just that's all. But I think it's a great answer. I mean,
I know that's not a popular opinion, and I get it.
Yeah.
I really do, because I do believe in the long process and the fact that you have to put in the work every single day to get where you're going. That's just the reality that I faced, and I was really lucky to be in the club environment that I was in, because if I was dependent on ODP picking me or US Soccer picking me, I was out of luck. So,
but it's also important for a goal, like you had mentioned, it's important for a goalkeeper to be able to step back and honestly evaluate their strengths and weaknesses. And some of your strengths and weaknesses are dictated by your dimensions. And, I've always had an old saying: if you're good enough, you're big enough. Okay. Well, that means you got to figure out a way to get around your weaknesses and polish your strengths, so that, like you say, you developed an ability to sort of dictate the way things were being played in front of you, so you knew it played into your strengths. One of the, and I can speak from personal experience, although this was back when the dinosaurs were still on the earth. I was a tall goalkeeper, and if I went to ground, it took, we had to get cranes and stuff to get me back up. And so I learned how to catch the ball. I worked on catching. And, because if you caught the ball, you could take all the time you wanted to get up, but if you parried a ball, and you had to, try to get off, I look like a fish on a dock. It took forever, and usually we gave up goals. But in the air, no problem. And so you have to figure out, you guys, I'm not speaking to Adelaide so much, but as the kids, have to figure out what works for you and develop that, and part of the development that Coach Lou is talking about is sort of discovering those traits that are within you as a goalkeeper, and in making the best of what you've got at the time. And it will change over time, particularly with our academy guys. A lot of them are kids. A lot of them, maybe they're small now, but they're not going to be small their whole life, so all of it is stuff that I think, in your development of a goalkeeper, there's many ways up Everest. You got to find the path that doesn't kill you, and you have to develop yourself that way.
Yeah. And I think it's important to realize that, like you said, tall people have issues as well. And I think that, realizing that whatever your issue is, whether you're not that tall, or you can't jump that high, or you're not that fast, or whatever, realizing that you do have strengths that, and not, no one's perfect. So no one has it all. I mean, maybe some people do, but most people don't have it all. So there's something, even if it's your brain, that, can set you apart, so maybe it's not even that visible.
Great. Okay. Do we want to go with an older or a younger question? We'll get to all of them. Don't
mind that people are younger.
You pick one. Which one you want to do? An older one or a younger one? You give me
Me?
Yeah.
Oh, whatever. Honestly,
okay.
I'll try to answer them quicker.
So we'll do how old were when you started playing soccer, and then I'm gonna kind of tweak this other and make it a two-part. Is what other sports did you play growing up, and what sports do you recommend to kind of cross-train for soccer? So kind of two-part question there.
I started playing, rec soccer probably when I was 5 or 4 or 5. Like tiny, really little, Sunday mornings, that kind of thing. I didn't start playing travel, you could say, until I was 8. And then I moved to PDA when I was like 12 or 13, I think. And in terms of other sports, I did not play any other sport super competitively, but I played like almost everything, randomly. I, at one point, was like a competitive figure, not competitive, but I was a figure skater. And from that, I became a hockey player because they were like, well, you can skate and hit people. Yes. So I played some hockey. I could never really do anything with the puck, but I could skate, and I was a defenseman.
If you can hit, you're okay.
Exactly. Hit people, basically. And they're like, you can't check people, you're 12, and what else did I play? I played softball in middle school. I played, seems like there was some other stuff I did. I danced when I was younger. My mom's a dance teacher, a ballroom dance teacher, so I did dance when I was younger. I would say, like, for me, when I played middle school soccer, I played in the field. Good for your foot skills, running. I would say anything that you enjoy is a good sport to cross train. Oh, I swam when I was younger. I feel like I did everything, especially
so a little bit of everything.
A little bit of everything, yeah.
Yeah, but the common theme of everything you did, they were sports that involved some form of coordination, whether it was moving different parts of the body at the same time, or hand-eye coordination, and they involve similar muscle groups, but not necessarily always the same muscle groups. And I think my favorite part of that point is things I enjoyed to do. I think if you're going to play another sport, and Evie and I both push that pretty hard, you got to enjoy that too. And you don't have to play travel softball in order for it to be fun, and I think, the fact that you played in middle school and you swam and you played hockey, I know Evie loves that, and I think that is something that, you had your primary sport, which was soccer. That was but you've made time for some other sports, which is fantastic, especially for goalkeeper development. So cool. I think this is good. So how old were you when you started playing soccer? How old were you when you started being a goalkeeper? And, kind of roll that into, who was your goalkeeping role model? Like, who made you want to be a goalkeeper?
Oh, well, definitely my dad, because my dad was a goalkeeper in college. So he played at Wesleyan back in the 70s, something like that. But yeah, so I'm sure that's where I got it. Even from when I was 8, I used to play in goal, not all of the time, but I always wanted to, for some odd reason, I guess. And nobody else wanted to. So it was, yeah, I've always sort of played in goal. But I wouldn't say that I played exclusively in goal maybe until I was like 12. It was pretty early. I always knew I wanted to be a goalkeeper. I just liked it. So.
Okay. Cool. So you say your dad was probably the biggest influence on you playing soccer, being a goalkeeper. I know you mentioned you wanted to be Bri. You wanted to be Brianna Scurry. What influence do you think she had on your goalkeeping career? How you play, some of the people on here will remember the 99ers, and some hopefully will go research the 99ers after this because of that. So I guess maybe dive a little deeper into why Brianna Scurry. So.
I mean, I think just because she was the most visible when I was younger, for sure. That's like the first female goalkeeper I remember. I don't remember anyone from before that. Men's goalkeeper, sure, but women's goalkeepers, yeah. And then after that, there was WUSA, and which is the first women's pro league. And it's funny, I actually met Brianda Scurry one time and she didn't sign an autograph for me. And so like, heard she's very nice, but after that, you know, I was kind of like, no. My family actually hosted a player that was playing in the W League in New Jersey named Karina LeBlanc. I don't know if you've heard of her. So she actually lived with my family for a few years. And I would say she's definitely like one of the huge role models in my life, and definitely changed the way that I saw goalkeeping and training in particular, like what you had to do to be at that level. Just seeing that day in, day out was definitely a huge, huge impact on my career for sure.
That's really cool. I mean, for our listeners, Karina LeBlanc is a former Canadian national team goalkeeper. I remember her because she would wear a mohawk, and it would be different colors. A lot of times it was red and white. And now, if you remember back to the World Cup, the last World Cup, Women's World Cup, she was one of the announcers that you would see, and, you know, color commentators. You know, that's really cool. That's awesome. You guys should look her up on YouTube. She's got some really, she's intense. That's probably the best way to put it. So, awesome.
Yeah.
That's cool. Okay. So this is one I've been holding off for a little bit, but I think it's a really good one. What made you transfer from Yale to UNC? You know, what was that? What was the decision-making process? You know, we've got a lot of players right now, who, especially our older female players, who are kind of getting a little nervous with, you know, the season being on hold, with the recruiting timeline, these dead periods that keep getting extended. And I know there's a lot of, so I think your decision-making process in transferring is kind of the big question here. Why did you transfer, and what, maybe even dive a little into the whole process a little bit as a smaller goalkeeper and as a walk-on, I guess would be a good way to put it.
Yeah, I mean, I can't imagine, going through this situation my junior or senior year, and being so unsure of stuff. I think it's a really, really stressful period of time, just thinking back to it. Even just at the end, it was like down between Yale and Georgetown, and like I just agonized over it. I remember being in school and I couldn't focus on anything that was happening. And I think it's very, very stressful because, you want to set your sights high, but you don't want to be unrealistic, and other people are committing. And especially if you're going to go to the Ivy League, you have to wait for a really long time. And that was like the issue, is Georgetown needed an answer sooner than Yale. And so it just, it's a very, very stressful time. And I very much empathize with what you all maybe are going through. In terms of transferring, I was at Yale for a year, and then I think a big part of it was I went and I played for a team out in California during the summer, called the Pally Blues. I don't know if you guys remember it, but they're a W League team, and which at the time maybe was the highest level, actually, because there wasn't a pro league at the time. But the team I played for was unbelievably ridiculous. Might to this day still be this like best team I've ever played for. I mean, there was like Whitney Angan, Tobin, Kelly O'Hara, Allie Riley, Lauren Cheney. Like I could list for you Nikki Washington, I'm forgetting like a bunch of people, but just a ridiculous roster of people. And so I was training with them every single day. And I think a big factor is then I went back to Yale, and I have to say Yale is not a bad school, and I'm sure it's a great fit for a lot of people. I actually know the current head coach really well, and Tiff, the other founder of Duke Brand, works on their staff. So I've never said anything bad about Yale now, especially now. I was not who was there when I was there, but and again, not a bad school. I'm sure it's a great fit for a lot of people, but having played there and then going back into that environment where the rules dictate that they can't even start preseason until a month after everyone else. There's like a lot of restraints, and a lot of people who go there, that's not like their first priority isn't playing soccer because they're going to do something else soon, and that's okay. So it was just a very contrasting environment, and I think that was one of the main reasons that I decided I didn't want to be there anymore. And so the process, at least back then, is you tell your coach you want to transfer, which is hard because you leap without a net. You can't talk to anyone else until you've decided you don't want to be where you are. So you kind of have to make peace with the fact that maybe I won't get to play anymore if I don't get to go somewhere else. And that's really, really difficult. It was really a tough time, but you basically send your release out to other schools. So that's something that your school sends to other schools, basically saying it's okay to talk to this player. We've okayed it. And like I said, I knew the goalkeeper coach at UNC. And so when they got my release, he just called me and was like, hey, what's going on? And so I talked to him for a little while. I took an official to UNC and an official to UCLA, and just kind of decided that UNC was like the fit that I wanted. And I actually had to spend a semester because I couldn't transfer into the fall, and I didn't want to be at Yale anymore, not being on a team. So I actually spent the spring at home, which in a weird way, it was really, really difficult because you guys probably understand, you're a soccer player, and that's such a huge part of your identity. And anytime that is sort of taken away from you, it's, especially the first time it's taken away from you, whether it be for an injury or anything, it's really, really difficult. So, yeah, and then I transferred into UNC, like I said, as a walk-on. The thing for me is I loved it from the first minute, whether I was playing or not. I loved being at training. And that to me has been like the constant throughout my entire career is I would rather go to training every day and absolutely love it and never play a minute. That said, I want to play, but I would rather love my environment on a daily basis than be somewhere where I don't love it and play every single minute. So of course there's a balance. You have to play and you want to play. But the daily environment is so important, and I loved every minute of it at UNC even before I got to play. So it worked out for sure, but there was a lot of uncertainty, and I will underline that.
So if I was to narrow it down, you got a taste of that competitive cauldron with the Pally Blues, and that kind of reignited a fire, sounds like, and you wanted to that's why you decided to take this step. I know it's, I think the biggest thing for our players to hear is that it's okay to be a little bit nervous and methodical in the initial process, and especially now because everyone is in the same boat. It's everyone's kind of on an equal footing, which normally is not the case, right? I think it's a great time to really figure out what you want out of a soccer program for our PSA or potential student athlete age goalkeepers, because they can really kind of consider the different factors that you've highlighted, both in the initial decision that you made and then that second round of the process. And you use a word quite often, environment, and that's huge. What do you want? What's it going to be every day for you at a school? What's it going to be like to wake up and either go to class if you're in an Ivy League all day, which they learned a lot about last week with Stefan, and then quite the opposite maybe with Caroline. You wake up, you go to a workout or a training, and then you go to class, and then maybe you go to a lift or practice, depending on the way, right? So I think figuring out the environment that you're looking for right now is a really good way to, I think, maximize this time that you've continually said that throughout our conversation, which is really cool and really great, I think, for our players to hear.
You know what you like and what you don't like. Even if you maybe don't think you know. You just have to like figure it out, you know? And sometimes it's really hard to admit what you want. So
Yeah.
it doesn't have to be that you want to play, you know, at the highest level. It doesn't have to be that you want to go to the best school. Like, you know what kind of environment you want to be in, and that's going to be the best fit for you. You just need to figure it out inside you.
Right. That's awesome. You know, let's see. We got a couple more. So we're going to kind of go the complete opposite way. One of our academy goalkeepers, Ella, would like to know, did you get a smaller chance because you were smaller? So I think what Ella was is, because you were smaller, was your opportunity smaller.
Yeah. Yes. I will say, like, at the professional level, I've still had coaches say to me, I just like a bigger goalkeeper. Anson, if you were 2 inches taller, you would be fill in the blank. ODP coaches, at every single level, it's been an issue. But at the same time, I wouldn't necessarily say like there's anything you can't do because you're small. But what I will say, and I think it's really, really, it seems like such a trivial thing to be smaller. But having said that, I do think that it is the greatest adversity that I have faced in goalkeeping, which I think is saying something. So,
Well,
yes, it's tough.
Evie and I know Evie's probably thinking this, but we harp on, you know, you got to get out and play with a ball and a wall because your feet are so important. And, you know, I think, you know, if I were to infer, and based on what I've seen of you playing and training, and you're so good with your feet that it almost minimizes and takes away and negates how small you are, because you're not that small. But you know, and I think if you have a skill set that is a strength, and you know you're comfortable receiving the ball under pressure and you want the ball at your feet, I mean, I think that that's a way to prove, hey, okay, I'm not 5'11", which is what you want in a female goalkeeper, yada yada yada, but I can still play, you know. And I think you've touched on that a couple times as well. So I think if you have a skill set that separates you from even someone who may be taller, that could help. I don't know if that's something that coaches have highlighted from your time. So
Yeah, and I also think there's so many opportunities that it's just finding those. So, and that's true of any, you know, coaches are going to have biases, even if it's not about being smaller. Some coaches might prefer someone who's much better with their feet. And, you know, especially having played overseas, it's not as big of an issue overseas. So I think it just depends on finding the right environment and realizing that like Evie, if you're good enough, you're big enough. I think that's part of why I say it's important what you think, because there, you know, people are going to say stuff and it doesn't mean it's true. And I feel like it's worse the first few times they say it when you're young, and that's when it's hard. Like, it's hard to hear it when I have so many goalkeepers that I coach that they come up to me and they're like, what do I do? Like, my coach said, you know, I'm not tall enough. And I'm like, you know, it's just like, and it's tough because they're young and you just want to say, it's not true. It's not true. It's not true. But it, you know, it's something that you just have to find the right opportunities and maybe be a little more persistent to find those opportunities, because they're there for sure.
Fantastic. Agreed. Let's see. So we have a question. What age do you start focusing on being a goalkeeper? I think you answered that at 12, was kind of when you really focused. And then the other part of that question they asked is, what motivated you to go beyond the collegiate level?
I mean, I just wanted to keep playing soccer. You know, and that's like the simple answer. There was no pro league when, you know, going into my senior season, and then I think I probably still would have gone overseas, because I was lucky enough to know people who had done that and knew that was an option. But I just wanted to keep playing, you know, and if you love to play, you just want to play, whether that's as a pro or pick up soccer, you know, so.
For sure.
It's all very similar, you know.
In that vein, an anonymous attendee asked, if I want to be a professional goalkeeper, how do I get seen to get that opportunity? I think that kind of stems from how you finished the last question.
I would say that this goes for college as well as professional, and just in life in general. I would just say focus on yourself and being of quality, not necessarily being seen, because I do think that if you're good, you will get seen by somebody, especially I feel like nowadays there's all these video all over the internet and everyone knows everyone is connecting with everyone all the time. So I wouldn't so much worry about, oh, I have to be seen by a coach, because a lot of times as a professional goalkeeper, either a team needs a goalkeeper or they don't. So whether they see you or not doesn't matter. It's more about sort of being prepared and being ready for when there is an opportunity, and, you know, you walk into preseason, you want to be 100% as, you know, sharp as you can be, because email coaches, like, ask people if they know teams, you know, you know all the people you need to know, probably. Just, you know, talk to people, figure out, you know, do your homework on what the different leagues are overseas and what the teams are. Most teams have a generic email. You can just send your video to them. Doesn't mean they're going to respond ever, but they might, you know. Most professional teams will let people walk into preseason the first day, assuming you have some sort of, you know, resume experience. Although most of them do have open tryouts as well. But yeah, so I wouldn't necessarily worry about being seen so much as just being of quality for when that opportunity comes.
I think the most important part of being, if you want to play pro, is keep showing up. Keep showing up, keep showing up, keep showing up, you know, because at some point, like Adelaide says, somebody's going to need a goalkeeper. Maybe more important than that is always act like you're being looked at, because you never know who's watching you, you know. And so don't go into, you know, a training session and just like, okay, today's a throwaway training session, I'm just going to show up and go through the motions and go home, because you never know who might be watching. And that person, like Adelaide says, that person knows somebody and knows somebody and knows somebody. Oh yeah, I saw this kid at in somewhere in Tennessee, pretty good goalkeeper, we should have a look at her. That's how it works, you know. And so you always want to be, you know, and Lou and I have talked about this, you want to have presence in everything you're doing, training, games, everything you're doing, regarding to, you know, revolving around soccer, revolving around life. But you want to have presence, and you want to do stuff the right way, because you never know who's watching.
Yeah, and I love the showing up thing, because it's actually crazy how many people don't do that one part. You know, show up to every training, every extra training, every potential extra possible training or game you could possibly play, and show up to it. And don't take it personally if somebody doesn't want you on their team. That sounds like such a simple thing, but a lot of times we get all bent out of shape, and in reality, it has nothing to do with us, you know? So, like, especially professionally, there's very few roster spots for women on professional teams. So, you know, just because some coach doesn't have a spot for you doesn't mean that they hate you or they might not sign you, but don't take it badly, you know, just keep doing what you're doing and keep looking for slots, because especially with goalkeeping, either they need one or they don't. And overseas, especially, they're not going to pay to bring an American overseas unless they're going to be their first string goalkeeper. So there's only one roster spot on that team that you could possibly have. And if someone's in it, they don't need you. So it's like, you just can't take it badly. Just keep working.
Great. So we've run a little long, but I think this has been fantastic for our club, for our players, for their parents, for our coaches that tuned in. I know Evie and I have been looking forward to this one since we were able to connect with you and you were free. So, I think there's always the question, they say, what could a younger goalkeeper do at home? And I think we've touched on that throughout, is, work on your feet still, get out there and just a little bit every day and stay sharp. So I think we're thankful that you were willing to do this for our club and for us, and know that we're always here if you need something down the road at Tennessee Soccer Club. Adelaide and Evie, I'll turn it over to you to wrap us up.
Well, we of course want to thank you, Adelaide, for your time. We appreciate your staying up late to talk to us and share your wisdom. And this is the kind of stuff, I think, particularly with, there's 2 or 3 young Adelaide gays out there in our club, and this talks to them, this speaks to them, and that's great. That's what they need. And so, not to keep you up any later, but thank you very much. Does Duke Tig make a goalkeeper journal, like a notebook that goalkeepers can write down the pearls of wisdom that Lou and I give them every day? There it is. There it is.
Okay. I designed it myself.
Yeah, actually, I think we connected and talked about it a couple times.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, you would think the Royce guy might get one. I don't know, but so.
I didn't give you one at the convention.
You gave it to Dave. You didn't give it to me. Dave's not even a goalkeeper.
Man, I'll have to rectify that. I'll send you one.
I'm just.
No, you need to have one. Yeah. Well, thank you guys for having me. I just want to say to all of the people that are still on the call that you guys have 2 fabulous coaches here, and to take advantage of them. And I think it's really cool that you guys are doing this for all the goalkeepers and lining up all these calls and stuff and all of these players. So I think that's awesome. Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you again, Adelaide.
Yeah, and feel free to share my email with everybody. And if anybody, like any of you guys, want to just shoot me an email if you have other questions, just shoot me an email.
Yeah,
thank you.
We'll make sure we put it at the end here when we put this on YouTube, so that's right there for everybody.
Okay, yeah. You know what? People can email me through my website, so
yeah. So, awesome. Well, thanks again, Adelaide.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you guys so much. Have a good night.
You too.
Whatever it is.